morning and welcome to the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce 2020 Legislative Breakfast. I am Julie Daigle, the Executive Director of the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm excited to welcome today's speakers, including our Chamber Chairperson, Teresa Reed, our signature sponsor, North Shore Bank, represented by Chris Pesce, the Peabody High School Advanced Placement U.S. Government and Politics student, Alexis Cortes, Senator Joan B. Lovely, Congressman Seth Moulton's District Representative Matt Crescenzo, State Representative Ted Speliotis, State Representative Thomas Walsh, and the City of Peabody Mayor Edward A. Bettencourt Jr. I would also like to thank the following elected officials for joining us today, including City Councilors Pete McGinn, I don't think that Tom Gould has entered yet, City Council President Tom Rosignol, former City Councilor Dave Gravel, and Electric Light Commissioner Tom Paris. I thought that we were going to have Salem State President John Keenan with us. I haven't seen. Oh, thank you for coming. We are able to host events like this through the generosity of our sponsors. I'll read them out loud, but please hold your applause because there are so many of them. Our signature sponsor, North Shore Bank, Atlantic Ambulance, the City of Peabody, Gravock, Mills 58, MRG Construction Management, Peabody Municipal Light Plant, Salem 5 Bank, Citizens Inn, Land Computer, Phil Richard Insurance, the Terigian Family YMCA, Metro Credit Union, Paget Business Services, Reed Law Firm, and Regulate Yours Life Coaching. Each of the businesses and organizations I just mentioned also sponsored 2 students from the Peabody High AP U.S. Government and Politics class in the Chamber's own Young Entrepreneurs Academy to join us for today's events. We also have a few members that sponsored a student with their ticket purchase, and thank you very much to them. They are Joe Lapore from Edward Jones and Tom O'Hare from Get College Going. I'm proud to share that we have 17 students joining us today. I'd like them all to stand so you can see who they are. Students? Our chairperson, Teresa Reed, is going to talk a little bit more about them in a few minutes. I'd also like to thank our programs director, Maria Terrace, and our office manager, Beth Amico, for making this event the success that it is, as well as our legislative breakfast committee. The Peabody Area Chamber has been supporting and advocating for our area business community for over 88 years. This group of business owners combine their voices to make change. A few months ago, I was contacted by a member, Anita Goki from Carl's Sausage Kitchen and European Market. Since 1958, Carl's has provided the very best in-hand made sausages, along with a large selection of European deli meats, imported cheeses, and grocery items. Carl's has a cafe serving authentic German food and a wide variety of imported beer and wine, and also offers full-service catering. Owners Anita and her husband Bob Goki moved their business from Saugus to Peabody in 2012. During my time as executive director, service of 6 years on the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and 4 acting as the business liaison for the City of Peabody, I have spoken with hundreds of businesses about dozens of challenges and issues they face daily. The recent ones I am going to share from Carl's are some of the most compelling. So these are some specific issues that Anita has shared with me. The price of deli gloves, butcher paper, and other paper products and takeout containers went up 50% in September due to tariffs. The price of European cheese, olives, and other items went up 25% in October due to tariffs. Carl's shipments from suppliers are arriving late from Europe as they are also short-staffed and the tariffs are affecting processing time. Minimum wage increased to $12.75 hourly on January 1st. It has gone up over 50% since 2012. It is slated to increase to $15 an hour by 2023, regardless of age or experience. This puts wage pressure on Carl's for their employees who were making $3 to $5 above minimum. Now to keep those employees, they must increase their wages as well. They are struggling to balance the price increase with rising costs of doing business. This does not include all of the additional costs for mandatory sick time, which doubles their hourly rate, family leave, and increase in health insurance. They have had positions open and unfilled for months due to the low employment rate and the poor quality of applicants. Among all of this, they are trying to compete and not be Amazoned, where you get free delivery immediately. Anita and Bob are hands-on, very active business owners. They have no shortage of customers. The parking lot there is always full, the cafe is always busy, and you can hardly get in there during most holidays. Anita did not reach out to me to complain, but to try to work together to find a solution with these problems. Part of her point is for others to think about the fact that not every small business is staffed like the big ones. They can't turn things around immediately, and you might need to wait a bit for some service. I have thought about these challenges very often and thought today was the best day of the year to share them with you all. I look forward to working with everyone in this room in 2020, and I think the only way we can improve this economic climate is by combining voices and working with the legislators who took time out of their busy schedules to be with us today. Our chamber is always looking forward, striving to provide the best resources and connections to help our members thrive and grow in a fast-moving, competitive, and modern economy. Shopping local is more important than ever. It will be our mission to continue to promote this throughout the year. Anita, thank you for being here today and allowing me to share this information. I'm sorry that Bob couldn't make it on this lunch date with you. I'd now like to introduce Chris Pesce from North Shore Bank, the premier sponsor for today's breakfast. The signature on Chris's email is simply the marketing guy. If you know Chris, he is so much more. He is a former chairman of the chamber and very active in the community. The chamber can always count on Chris, board member Liz White, and Kevin Tierney and the North Shore Bank team for their support. I think they've been members for 85 years or more. So Chris, welcome, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start out by thanking the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event every year, and also for everything you do for the businesses here in Peabody throughout the whole year. Great organization. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our elected officials who are here today to talk to us a little bit about the challenges and also the opportunities that face our businesses today. It is North Shore Bank's pleasure to once again sponsor this legislative breakfast, and we're proud to partner with the city on some important initiatives such as education, affordable housing, the revitalization of the downtown district, initiatives that have made the city of Peabody a better place to live, work, and raise our children. North Shore Bank has been a staple in Peabody for over 130 years, and we assure you that we will continue our long tradition of meeting the financial and philanthropic needs of the people, families, businesses, and the nonprofit organizations here in Peabody going in the future. We welcome you to visit one of our 18 branches. Recently, we merged with Beverly Bank, so now we have 4 branches here in Peabody. And we also invite you to speak with one of our commercial and business officers to discuss how we can help you meet your business goals and objectives. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, and I wish you all a happy and prosperous 2020. Thank you.
And now I'd like to welcome our chairperson, Teresa Reed, to the podium.
Good morning, and welcome to the Legislative Breakfast. Last year, the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce hosted several great events organized through our Government Advocacy Committee. One such event was a political forum to allow the Peabody City Council candidates the opportunity to answer questions about their role in supporting businesses in the city, such as their position on the issue of taxes. In preparation of that forum, we met with the city assessor who educated us on how the commercial tax rate was calculated and applied to businesses throughout the city. Recently, the Government Advocacy Committee surveyed the membership and agreed that the issues that we would focus on in the upcoming year will include transportation, workforce housing, attracting and retaining a well-trained workforce, improvements to local infrastructure, including the broadband internet, and support for small businesses struggling to compete with the growing digital economy. We look forward to the involvement and input from all of our members and the community at large relative to these issues, as well as our many future events. In preparation for our speakers today, we asked the high school government class at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School to present a question relative to an issue that they feel is important. The AP Government and Politics is an elective available to seniors at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School. So far this year, the students have learned about the foundations of American government, the interactions between the branches of government, civil liberties, and civil rights. Soon they'll be examining public opinion, campaigns and elections, and how political participation shapes public policy. In addition to talking about what is on the horizon for 2020 and how the Chamber can be helpful, we're asking the legislative officials today who are speaking to address a question that the class has prepared. The class has asked that Alexis Cortes to read the question to the panel today. Alexis is a 17-year-old senior at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, and she plans to major in political science and pre-law. Good choice. Please help me in welcoming Alexis to the podium.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you for having us as students. So as students at Peabody High School and members of the AP U.S. Government and Politics class, we are interested primarily in how the government operates at all levels, whether it be nationally, statewide, or locally. And one activity we did in class was a mock House of Representatives where we each wrote and proposed bills. We were assigned to parties and proposed the bills to the speaker. And we met in committee for debate and markup. And my bill was actually chosen to be considered by the House. And the basis of the bill was to provide 2 free meals per day, every day of the year for students living below the poverty line. Another component of the bill involved local industries, fishing, farming, and other natural resources of each state that would be integrated into the meal plan to provide students with economic disadvantages adequate nutrition. I know that the topic of school lunch has been of stark contention, especially here in Peabody, and my question is how feasible would this approach be to provide proper nutrition and support to our local industries, locally or statewide?
Thank you, Alexis. And now I'd like to welcome Senator B. Lovely to the podium to talk about the forecast for the year ahead, how the Chamber can be helpful, and to, if you can, address a little bit of Alexis's concerns. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. Thank you for that kind introduction and thank you for the opportunity to be here again this year. This is really a highlight for us as local electeds to be able to come and share with you what's going on in the State House, but particularly taking on this really great question. And so I'd like to actually start right there. I have the bill. Thank you. I read the bill. It was submitted to the 116th Congress session, or will be. It's very thorough. Bills are not easy to write, so you really did your homework, and so thank you very much. And let me talk about it a little bit, because it's really timely at the state level. And thank you again for not just the AP U.S. government, but all of the students here today. You being here is so important. It's really the founding of our democracy. You're our future, so being engaged at your age and going forward, I feel like we're in good hands, so thank you for doing that. So this bill's pretty timely, actually. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Senate passed a bill to ensure schools with a higher number of low-income students receive breakfast after the start of the school day. There's many schools that are doing it. The Walsh School does it right here in the city of Peabody. So at the elementary level, this is happening. Salem schools, every elementary school is involved in this. And why? Because children coming into school, if your belly's empty, you can't concentrate. You're not ready to learn. So we want to make sure that when you're coming into school, you are ready to learn. So I actually had an opportunity to tour one of the Salem schools last year and kind of see how this happens. So a couple of students from each class will go down to the cafeteria and they get a cooler that's filled with milk, juices, cereals, fresh fruit, and they come back up, and every student, when they come in, when they hang up their coat, they get ready, they grab a book or a little assignment that they have, everybody gets breakfast. Everybody takes something, everybody goes back to their seat. And you know what that does? It doesn't differentiate between low-income students and students who can afford to have breakfast or maybe have already had breakfast. Nobody knows, and that's what the most important part of this is. Because we've had many school breakfast programs that have not done well because students coming in who are only eligible aren't, peeling off from their peers to go have breakfast because everybody knows they can't afford the food at home. So that's what's so important. So I actually had an opportunity last week. I had a Beverly constituent come in, and she is working for the Massachusetts Farm to School program. And they have filed legislation to do a competitive program, a grant program, that allows our local schools to purchase and prepare locally grown and produced ingredients right here in the very communities in which we live and we work. And these partnerships are ways to support local agriculture and get students their proper nutrition. It's also ways to combat climate change by supporting local, sustainable farming and fishing practices. So it absolutely goes right in with exactly what your bill says. I'm so proud that this constituent came forward and is trying to do this right in our very own communities. So the answer to your question is yes, we can do this. Linking schools and local industries is a great way to provide students with, again, nutritious meals while boosting our local economy. A win-win all the way around. So thank you for submitting that bill. I hope it does get submitted to Congress. Has it officially yet? Not yet, or it's going to? It has? No. Not yet. Okay, we'll do it. Your congressman's representative is right here, so get that done. I will tell you, we love it when students come in and submit legislation to us to be filed. We can either do it by request, but we sponsor those bills. I will tell you, the Congress will take a keen interest in this bill because it's submitted by the very students that it benefits. So it's a win-win. So please keep working really hard on this really, really wonderful bill. Let me just give you a couple of updates of things that I'm hearing in my office. We are moving to the last 6 months of our formal session. We're in year 2 of our legislative session. Formal session ends at the end of July. What does that mean? We have about 6,000 bills to get funneled out of committees by what we call Joint Rule 10 Day, which is February 5th, right around the corner. Those will get funneled into a couple of different committees, either into Ways and Means if it's a money bill, Rules if it's a policy bill. I'm the Rules Chair on the Senate side. House and bills in third reading is where they get funneled on the House side, so the representative and I will be quite busy the next few months as we really start to really work on some really major legislation. What is that? Transportation, as all of you know, I'm sure. We're really trying to fix our transportation woes with Governor Baker. It's been challenging. It's been decades of delayed maintenance and capital improvements, and it all came to kind of the rubber met the road back in 2015 when we had 11 feet of snow. And then we saw how broken we really are. So we're working closely with the Baker administration to try to come up with those fixes. It's not easy. I will tell you, this is not overnight, as you know, so please bear with us. Please, although, let us know how bad it is. I hear from constituents every day. Please don't say, oh, they're not doing anything, they're not going to do anything. Please let us know. We funnel those off to the appropriate agencies, mostly the MBTA, and they try to do the fixes as we go. But it's going to be a process, but I will promise you we'll get there. I'm looking for full electrification of our system. That's about a 25-year plan, but I think it's the best way and it's the best for our climate as well. I will tell you the number one call besides transportation, though, is housing. We've got, obviously you all know what's happening with our housing. We don't have enough of it. What's great is we have low unemployment. We have a lot of people who are working, but they still can't afford to live here. So we are still working on that. It's very difficult. By the time someone calls our offices, they're either homeless, the moving vans out front, they have no place to go. It's really dire. So we are working. Again, the governor has put forth his housing choice program to try to look at zoning. How can we, rework our local zoning to be able to make sure that it thoughtfully works in each community? Each community is very different, but we do need to continue to be able to do that. Back to transportation. Just want to give a plug to the downtown trolley that we're working with. with Mayor Bettencourt, the city council, the representatives. We just got another $200,000 infusion to be able to continue that work towards that study. It can happen. It can happen right on that rail spur going right into Salem. It not only benefits Peabody, but it benefits many of the stops on the way to Salem. It's terrific. We're going to continue to work really hard. I want to thank Mayor Bettencourt and the city for really being leaders on that. And before I end, I'll talk quickly about health care. The Senate just did a great bill last month, the PACT Act. It's actually looking at reducing our pharmaceuticals. We are saying that's probably one of the most expensive parts of our healthcare system. We, in the Senate side, it's now in the House side, we're hoping the House will take it up and the governor will sign it. We started with insulin, a life-saving drug. You can't live without your insulin. So now you're going to have one small copay a month, no matter who you are. One small copay. You're not going to pay any more. We don't care, insured, not insured. Well, if you're not insured, you're going to get it for free. But if you're insured, you've got one low copay. And that's it. Life-saving medication, something you can't live without. We're going to look at epinephrine. Again, a life-saving medication. When you need an EpiPen, you need it because you are in full anaphylaxis. So taking a look at that going forward, we're hoping, again, to make an impact there. I just want to say, in closing, I want to say thank you to these two great state reps that I work with. We are really a strong delegation on the North Shore. I want to give a big shout out to the staff that works for us and supports us. We couldn't do the work that we do without them as well. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. Appreciate it.
Next, I'd like to welcome Matt Crescenzo from our Congressman's office, and I have to warn you, Matt, that Michael Devin was very funny last year, so I hope you have some jokes on the queue. No pressure.
Okay, that's a great way to. So normally when I start these, when I'm up here or at an event to speak, I usually start with like a really brief, broad overview of what's going on in Congress. I got a few things to cover today, and nobody probably wants to be that nauseous so close to breakfast. So I'm going to skip over it. That really fell flat. So I'm going to skip over it. I guess Mike Devin's funnier.
We'll see. Good time.
So I'm going to start with your question, and the answer is yes. Study after study has shown overwhelming evidence that strong nutrition standards, like school meals, help students in the classroom. And it's really timely because we actually are sending a letter to USDA Secretary Perdue, given that the president has just reversed some of the meal standards. So this is something that Congress is working on, as well as we just had a conversation, our office did, our DC office, a legislative team with Project Bread, who are doing some great things here in Massachusetts. So to briefly, yes, it is sustainable, and yes, it is something that our office is working on right now, so it's extremely timely, and be sure to find me after this, and we can definitely put you in touch with our legislative team. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the census. 2020 census is a lot closer than you think. So why is that important? Well, the census is important because everyone is counted, and we're talking about $675 billion that are going to, in federal funds that are going to be, whether it's grant or support, distributed to states, counties, communities, and that's all based on census data. And this money is spent on schools, hospitals, roads, public programs, other vital programs. So our office is partnering with the census. It's easier than ever this year. You can do it online. And if anyone knows anybody that's looking for work, the census pays $27.50 an hour for census workers. So please, if there's any questions you have, if you want to get involved at all, do reach out to our office. We are partnering with the census to help them in 2020. On to business at hand. I have a letter from Congressman Moulton, who could not be here today. But chamber members and attendees, I'm sorry I couldn't join you today, but duty calls in Washington. I want you to know that I'm fighting for you every day, so it's easier to do business here in Peabody and throughout the North Shore. I'm doing that by fighting for apprenticeships and other types of job training. for smarter tax reforms that help businesses rather than the wealthiest few, and as a member of the New Democrats Coalition, the largest caucus in Congress that's focused on growing the economy, embracing innovation, and promoting smart and fiscally responsible policy. We're also promoting policies like Chance in Tech Act, which promotes the development of access and apprenticeships in the technology sector. America at Work, which creates lifelong learning accounts for tech training. And the AI Jobs Act, which seeks to spur innovation while encouraging the training and retraining of American workers. It also means speaking up for our region in trade negotiations, so we land on trade policies that allow us to sell more of what we make overseas while protecting jobs here at home. I want to make it easier to get to work by creating a regional, reliable, electrified commuter rail system that cuts traffic and gives people more choices for how they get around. So, that's a long way of saying, count me as a partner as you build successful businesses that make our community stronger by creating jobs and giving back. Sincerely, and thanks, Congressman Seth Moulton. I want to thank you all for having me here today. I should have started with that. I'm sorry I couldn't be as funny as Mike Devon. But maybe I can be more responsive than him, I don't know. So,
You have been.
oh, see, all right, so see, there we go. So I appreciate you all today. If there's anything that our office can do for your businesses or for you as constituents, please reach out. It's a new year. We want to start it off right. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So now the pressure's on for a little levity from our state representative, Ted Speliotis. He's known for his good humor, so cross your fingers.
I'm not sure about that, but I appreciate the compliment. I love the fact, I can't resist, that the Peabody Chamber says Peabody Area Chamber, since I live in Danvers and also represent Middleton and follow you guys around the North Shore. I want to answer Alexis's question first and just take a second, a very brief moment to tell you that when I was a senior in high school, I took that AP class. And our job at the end, to tell you how you can connect school to real life, was to write a huge thesis paper rather than an exam. And my thesis was on the entirety of the life of King Hussein of Jordan. His son is now king. And I knew, when I graduated from high school, I knew every little bit of King Hussein. And a few years later, I got elected to the State House, and I think I was a freshman rep, and King Hussein's wife, Queen Nora, was a visitor at the State House. And she was in the Senate chamber reading room, and I knew that she was born in New Jersey, had graduated from MIT, and was here for some forum. And this is hard for you folks to realize, but it was one of the few times in my life I was like completely speechless. Because I had no clue what I could say to this woman who I knew every little bit about her life. So if you don't think that school doesn't connect to real world, sometimes it does. And it did that time. On your question on nutrition, Alexis, and schools, we have spent my lifetime trying to improve the meals and opportunities for kids in school. We have led the nation like we do in so many areas. But as Matt said, with the stroke of a pen, they've wiped away all the nutrition requirements that local communities can do. And you know that sometimes nutrition costs a few dollars more than, junk food, and sometimes, or more attractive and deals. So we have to fight back at that. So we appreciate your legislation. On a very parochial subject, yesterday I testified before the Committee on State Administration on a little pet thing that I have. The Boston Convention Center is looking to expand, but they're also looking to contract. They are proposing to sell the Heinz Auditorium and use that money to expand the BCEC, the Boston Convention Center. And I suggested to them that if this legislation moves, we create a little study that would be led maybe by President Keenan's staff and others to look at the idea of a little mini convention center here in Centennial Park and also one down in the Cape. Now, I can be honest with you and tell you that that legislation that was heard yesterday has less than a 50% chance of passage. It's a model that we're kind of skeptical about. They want to use the funding of one building, the sale of the Heinz, to build the expansion. The only trouble they have is there's not enough money in the Heinz sale to do what they want to do. So it's going to take some time. But I wanted to lay that foundation yesterday and want to let you know that places like the Marriott and others could be very helpful to us. The reason I'd like that to happen is, as you all know, 500,000 tourists come to Salem each and every year for the month of October alone. We're the most unusual suburban area to attract tourists in perhaps the entire country. And I feel it's something that we ought to look at, and we, as your political leaders, should keep on our radar screen. I just throw that out, like I said. Anyone interested, let me know. I would like to tell you on a larger scale, or before I do, for Anita, I think it's the most frustrating thing for us to fight the tide of big business and big government. We have to address big issues like family leave, minimum wage, things like that. And we know that each one of these things could be or may be a nail in the coffin of a little business. And it's really hard to compete against Amazon and all those other companies. So we try, but I wish we could do better, to be quite honest with you. And it's really the essence of why you're here today. Because if you're not here, we really see what happens at the State House and in Washington with big business. So I ask you to keep coming, keep pushing us, and keep trying to get those little changes in these bills that make the difference between whether you survive or don't survive. On a bigger scale, I'd like to say to you that the State House is probably a building that's full of tremendously nervous energy right now. Because usually we come before you and tell you we don't have enough money, we have enough money, whatever. But it's really not a resource question right now. It's really a management question. How we manage these resources, how we manage our expectations, how we manage our demands. And what I mean by that is, as Senator Lovely pointed out, how do we address the concerns of your transportation needs and the fact of climate change? Well, what's on the table right now are two basically different taxes. And how do we tell our constituents we're going to raise the gas tax twice or some different way to address all of the issues? When it comes to housing, we can change the vote at the local level from 2/3 to a majority to build more housing. But does it truly address the problem? My consideration is that we could do that by providing some type of a linkage or inclusionary zoning proposal that would be sweeter than what Peabody did. Peabody tried that a number of years ago, hasn't really worked, but I think it's a much better and effective way. You require people, like they do in Somerville and Cambridge, but statewide, that when you get to a certain level, You build so many units, you got to offer some affordable ones. And you got to offer a lottery for people that live in the community to stay in the community. It's a pretty simple proposal that's done in most urban areas. It needs to come out in the suburbs. And I'd prefer that than changing the zoning law, to be quite frank for you, or the voting thing. In the way of education, Senator Lovely didn't mention it, but you're blessed here to have Senator Lovely, Representative Walsh, represent you on the Education Committee. And we put a huge infusion of funds, and that's what I'm talking about, nervous energy. How do we pass it? Usually we pass one of these bills a session. How do we pass multiple bills to address housing, climate change, transportation, education, all in one session and get reelected? That's the real thing. So that's really where we are, and I'm going to leave you with that. Not too funny, but pretty good, I think. I hope you liked it. But I will say one more thing. I have one personal message. You know, if you're a parent or a grandparent, as most of us are, Senator Lovely leads the charge on issues such as child molestation, rape, and others. I tell you that it's getting a lot more attention than you think. We, in every community in this Commonwealth, have some predator that's out there. And the simple answer is, don't take your eyes off your kids. Whether it's in a hockey rink, a basketball court, that's where people go. I drove in a hurricane a couple of years ago, and Senator Lovely knows this, to Foxborough, so I'm not going to keep it local, in which one man pried on kids for decades. And he was a Boy Scout leader, a coach, worked in the school system. He pried on everyone, and the community was devastated. And I had to go in a hurricane to tell them the legislation they wanted was unconstitutional. And what really was very painful that night was they didn't find out until this man was in a hospital with Alzheimer's in a rehab facility. So I tell you that no matter what we have as big issues, those families that feel the pain, it's a really tough night for us to meet with those people. So I just ask you, please, don't take your eyes off your kids. It's an old story. Don't trust anyone, and especially us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome Representative Tom Walsh to come up and speak.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Julie, for inviting us this morning, and to all the members of the Peabody Area of Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning. I'm finding it always interesting following Representative Speliotis, because you know, I was a little bit nervous. I didn't have a joke, so I just wanted to start off before I get into talking about the partnership between local government and local business in the state. I just wanted to say a couple things. First of all, on your legislation, it was earlier this year in our session that we voted on a after the bell legislation, which dealt with the food programs that Senator Lovely spoke about, in trying to feed our children in a setting that is not confrontational, not judgmental, and you're taking that a step further, and I think that's fantastic. Everything has a cost, so you have to figure that out, and as we can all tell you, that once a piece of legislation passes one committee, a lot of times it ends up in the Ways and Means Committee to look at the costs and how we can fund those programs. So you have a ways to go, but good for you, and if we can help in any way, certainly would love to do that. You know, I was thinking on the way over this morning, it will be 4 years next week that I won the nomination to return to the State House, and so this is my third time being with you at this breakfast, and it's amazing how time goes by. And what I was thinking about is really the partnership between municipalities and state government and how it affects business. And if you look at the city of Peabody, what the council has done, what the mayor has done, through funding and programs that have been created at the state level, for instance, the mass development work and what has happened downtown. And I give the mayor in particular a lot of credit for his perseverance on rejuvenating downtown Peabody. You know, main streets, so many of you in this room have invested in what really, as I said last week, has become no longer a pass-through, but Main Street is now a destination. And the story I want to tell you is this. I have a very good friend of mine who went to junior high school and high school with me, and college as well. And he left Peabody. He moved out of Peabody shortly after college. And, you know, he used to, I guess, make fun of me a little bit because I always told him Peabody was the greatest place and you know, this is where I was going to stay. So anyway, we've come full circle. He now works in the downtown area. So a few weeks ago, he called me and he said, hey, why don't we grab a beer after I get out of work? I said, okay. So I said, this is what we'll do. We'll have dinner at La Siesta. So he says, okay, so we're going to stay downtown. So we eat at La Siesta, and then we decided we would try Stanzi's since it just opened. So we went over there, had a beer at Stanzi's, and he said to me, this is great. He said, I can't believe I'm in downtown Peabody. He said, you know, when we get all our friends together, there's a group of us from high school who get together a couple times a year. He said, we're coming here. So congratulations to all of you who have invested and made that commitment to downtown Peabody, because now my friends who no longer live in Peabody want to come back and have dinner here and celebrate what is here. So good for everybody in this room. Now shifting gears a little bit. My colleagues touched on it a little bit, but the budget just came out. The governor has proposed his budget, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the process and what to expect over the course of the next several months. The governor's proposal is roughly $44.6 billion, and you think, oh my God, that is a lot of money. But what we can tell you is that no matter how much money there is, it seems there's never enough for every constituency that comes before us, all with very noble, worthy causes. But sometimes we have to say, no, this is your line item. This year we're not going to be able to increase you. We're estimating basically a growth of somewhere around 2.8% this year. So, you know, that means we'll have a pretty cautious budget going into the next fiscal year. A couple of the other things, so the process in the budget now will be that the House budget will be submitted sometime in the next few weeks. It will be similar to the governor's, and then a series of hearings will take place across the Commonwealth. Senator Lovely and I both serve on the Ways and Means Committee. Each hearing has a different piece of the budget. One will be geared towards municipalities, the local aid piece of it. Another day will be education. Another day will be health and human services, which is a very long, pretty emotional day. So all those things will happen, and then we will vote on a budget sometime in April. Then it goes to the Senate, and they do the same thing. The hearings across the state, fortunately, we all participate in, so those hearings only occur once. And it gives the opportunity for everybody across the Commonwealth to have their say and let us know what's important to them in the budget. Ted mentioned the Education Committee, and one of the landmark pieces of legislation that we have addressed is the Student Opportunity Act, which is the funding of Chapter 70. It's the school aid to cities and towns. And over the course of the next 7 years, there's a commitment of an additional $1.5 billion. And it's not just putting money into school systems, it's really trying to address the achievement gap. And that there are some communities that have been so far down as their per pupil cost that we're not sure they're getting the education. And you want to talk about workforce training. I think it's important that everybody has the very basics of an education. And that's what the goal of the Student Opportunity Act is. We talked about housing, we talked about transportation. I think though, and by the way, last year, I think I mentioned in the little write-up that When we talked last year, we talked about hands-free. And it is now the law in Massachusetts that you should not be on your phone while you're driving. It has to be hands-free, and I think that's going to save lives in the Commonwealth. It took many years to get to this point, but I do think it's a good thing. It's positive for all of us. I did want to talk, when we get to transportation, a little bit, probably more locally. You'll see a lot of things going on in the Peabody area. You know, the mayor and the city council has been working with the MWRA. They're doing a new pipeline up on Route 1, and I hope I'm not stealing your but anyway, Route 1 will be paved when that's completed, and that will be with state funding. Route 128, you notice that the cones and some of the signs are up between the North Shore Mall and the Liberty Tree Mall. The Waters River Bridge, this is what I tell people, the Waters River Bridge is in Danvers. That's Representative Speliotis' district. He represents the bridge. The neighbors are on Tammy Lane and Esquire Drive, the two sides, so I represent the residents. So Ted gets... I don't even know where that is. Anyway, this is an interesting project in that the proposal a couple years ago was that the bridge itself needs to be replaced, and I think most of you drive over this and don't even realize there's a bridge there, but when you're driving on Route 128, right on the Danvers-Peabody line, you'll look on either side and you see the Little River and the marsh area. Well, there's a bridge there that's level with the highway, and it is in dire need of replacement. So the original proposal for a bridge replacement then went to, well, if we're going to do that, and this is MassDOT saying, then we should create an acceleration lane, so when you come off Endicott Street in Danvers and head south on Route 128, you would have an acceleration lane. And then what they did is halfway on that, they decided that we'll have a deceleration lane as you wanted to go on to Route 114 West. So when the neighbors approached us and said, if you are widening the highway, then we're going to be affected more greatly and deeply by the noise, we think we should get a sound barrier. And the response from MassDOT was, you don't qualify for a sound barrier because you would have to be adding another lane. And our argument was, well, you are, but you're calling it an acceleration lane halfway and a deceleration lane the other half. But it is, in fact, another lane. Ultimately, we prevailed with the Federal Highway Administration and MassDOT, and that project is moving forward. But you'll see in the spring, in the next few months, the work is starting, and that's going to be it's going to be a few years. Yeah, they estimate 5 years. We're hoping that is not the case, but it is a multi-phase project that I think everybody should be ready for, because it will affect you. You know, it'll affect the way people come in and out of Peabody, and we need to be prepared for that. Another thing on traffic. I know we talk about the large-scale things and the big picture, but I also think there are little things that we can do and have done, and I'm gonna leave one because I know the mayor will mention it, but I did want to point out a few little things that I think are important. Some things that I think the council can do, some things that, you know, one of the things that I wanted to do when I was on the city council, I think we have far too many no turn on red intersections in the city, and I think that you could move traffic a little bit if you could move the cars. But we've been successful in a couple places working with the state and community development. One is Centennial Drive. If you recall a few years ago, when you entered from Route 128 into Centennial Park, the lanes were opposite from how we teach people how to drive. You're supposed to, if you're on the right, you're supposed to yield. And you'd come off the highway, and you were able to go, so the cars coming over from Forest Street were supposed to yield, but they had the main way, so there were always accidents there. So we were successful working with, again, with Kurt and our police department and the Mass Highway Department. We were successful in having that restriped, and it goes the way it's supposed to. And the amount of accidents there have reduced significantly. This year, and it was a suggestion probably about 2 years ago, a conversation with Councilor Turco, who was the Ward 1 councilor at the time, and there was a constituent up in the Crestview Park area who said that, suggested that we do a second lane at the Goodwin Circle Rotary. And for those of you familiar with that, in the morning on Linfield Street, the traffic would back up sometimes as far back as the Y, trying to get out to Route 1 or Route 128. So we approached MassDOT about this, and the one thing I have learned in my short time back in the legislature is when you ask a question, the answer is always no. It's always no. And then you have to go fight for it. So this is kind of one of the, it's such a simple story, but it took forever to do, in my opinion. So we asked MassDOT if they would do that, and the answer was, you don't have enough width there for another lane. And even if you did, there's a drop-off at the condo at Cedar Pond Village, so you wouldn't be able to do this. So, you know, we thought about it and said, no, this doesn't make sense. You've done it on the other side, over on the Salem Street side, coming from Route 1, heading into Lynn and Linfield. So finally, they agreed that they would do a traffic count. So a year ago, last October, a traffic count was conducted, and we were informed that, yes, indeed, this would qualify for 2 lanes. And I thought, this is great. So I said, great, when are we going to do it? Oh, we can't do it. What do you mean we can't do it? So we met with the engineers last March. We actually went out to the site, and they explained to me about the drop-off and how this just couldn't work. And I said to them, I said, with all due respect, I said, from a layman's point of view, if you just cut 4 feet over here on this little island, we can make this work. So they said, okay, we'll take a look at it. A couple months later, they came back and they said, we think we can do it. So then in October, I talked with MassDOT, and they said, yeah, we think we're going to do it. We're not sure if we can have it on the construction schedule for this year. I said, okay. A couple of weeks later, I drive by, and the tractor's out there digging up the curb. 2 days they did this project. If you go in the morning on Linfield Street to the Goodwin Circle, there is no traffic at 9 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning. You can go right because you have the 2 lanes that now one can merge towards Route 128, one can head toward Route 1, and it makes residents' commute that much easier. So these are people who work for you. In many cases, they can get to work easier. I'd like to say it's the same at night, but we still have an issue with that left-hand turn onto Casco Road that does back up traffic. But it's little things like that. And again, I'm going to sit down. I've taken too much of your time, but it's working on little things like that that do contribute to the larger picture. And it's really all of us working together that will make Peabody work, make your businesses do well, and together we can really continue to make this community a really fun place to live. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Representative. And now last but certainly not least, I want to introduce the City of Peabody Mayor, Edward A. Bettencourt, Jr.
Oh, good morning, and I'm once again honored to be here among such a distinguished group of the region's business and civic leaders. I want to welcome our Peabody High School students. It's great to have you here with us. Thank you to Julie and the Chamber of Commerce for this wonderful opportunity to talk about the city and what's taking place in our region. This morning I will briefly, in 7 minutes, highlight some areas where I believe our city is heading in the right direction. But as I said during my inauguration ceremony earlier this month, our greatest strength as a city, and yours as a business community, is Peabody pride. Many of us who grew up in Peabody remember the deep feelings of pride which came with being part of such a unique and close-knit community. As mayor, I have strived to expand that sense of Peabody as a special place to live, work, go to school, and raise a family. Peabody pride can be seen in many places throughout our city every day. In our schools, where students utilize the latest technology to learn about the world around them. On our streets and in our neighborhoods, where our police officers and firefighters demonstrate their great skill and professionalism to keep us safe. On Main Street in downtown Peabody, where entrepreneurs are opening new businesses and creating new jobs. And at places like Crystal Lake, where families once again gather to enjoy the great outdoors. Peabody pride means investing in our city's future by rebuilding our aging infrastructure. The Peabody Water Infrastructure Improvement Project will begin this spring, a $36 million initiative to stabilize, modernize, and upgrade Peabody's whole water infrastructure program. We continue preliminary design on the $10 million Central Street Improvement Project, which will rebuild the entire Central Street corridor beginning at its intersection with Walnut Street and continuing through Wilson Square to 114. Peabody pride is on display with the ongoing revitalization of Main Street and downtown Peabody. The Black Box Theater and our City Hall's Wigan Auditorium are bringing the performing arts to those looking for a fun and affordable night out on the town. New restaurants like La Siesta, Next Mex Thing, and Stanzi's Country Ranch are happy to accommodate the hungry crowds. Oleo Peabody features 6,000 square feet of event space for weddings, fundraisers, galas, trade shows, and expos. The remarkable success of the Curious City Pop-Up Children's Museum has led to plans for a permanent children's museum to be located in downtown Peabody. This is exactly the kind of destination attraction that will cement downtown Peabody as a vital center of Peabody culture and commerce. And you heard earlier the news from Senator Lovely about the $200,000 in state funds to study the feasibility of a trolley connection between downtown Peabody and the Salem Commuter Rail Service. And although they're not funny, I do want to thank our state legislators. Although they're not funny when they intend to be funny. But we are extremely lucky to have wonderful legislators like each of them working for our city. I could speak about other areas of the city where tremendous things are happening. North Shore Mall, I know we have Representatives Mark Whiting, Lauren here today. Millions, $100 million project is going on at the North Shore Mall. And the Mills at 58 Pulaski Street, I know Ed Greeley is here today. Some tremendous things are happening, and I want to thank all of you for investing in our community. Peabody Pride helps make our city a desirable place to live, to start a family, or to open a new business. For the 5th year in a row, our average residential home value has increased, this year by 7.4%, which reflects the highest value in our city's history. Recently, USA Today reported that Peabody is home to the 5th strongest real estate market in the country. Peabody homes sell in an average of 20 days, which is 46 days faster than in the rest of the United States. Now, I have my phone over there, and all I have is pictures of my kids like all of you. Well, I have pictures of my kids and then the USA Today article that says Peabody is the 5th hottest real estate market in the United States. Thanks to the outstanding men and women of the Peabody Police and Fire Departments, Peabody ranks among the top 30 safest cities in the United States, according to Safe Home, an organization that analyzes FBI crime statistics for America's cities and towns. In June, I granted a franchise license to RCN to offer its cable TV, high-speed internet, and telephone services in Peabody. This ends a 40-year monopoly of cable TV service in the city and ushers in a new era of competition intended to benefit residents and businesses alike. Although our budget obligations have increased, we are still able to invest in Peabody's future thanks to our city's financial strength and to the strong partnership between City Hall and the City Council. Peabody homeowners continue to get exceptional value for their tax dollar here in Peabody, while our residents enjoy a level of municipal services which meet or exceed those of nearby cities and towns. They benefit from property taxes that are on average hundreds and even thousands of dollars less than those communities. In fact, this year, for the first time in many, many years, Peabody homeowners, according to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, will have the lowest average tax bill of any city or town in Essex County, and among the very lowest in all of Massachusetts. Peabody is by no means a perfect city, and the problems we face will challenge all of us in the decade ahead. But our ability to work together to secure a better future for our children and our community spirit, our Peabody pride, will see us through whatever challenges come our way. Ours is a great city, and the best days lie ahead. And again, I want to thank all of you for your commitment to Peabody. As I always say this, I always look around the room, and the people here are those people that are volunteering and dedicating themselves in so many different ways. And I just want to thank all of you for giving of yourselves to the city of Peabody. It matters, and it means a lot to all of us. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. And I would like to come to the class. Is it Mrs. Gore, Mr. McHugh? Who's the teacher? Mr. McHugh? I'd like to kind of come and maybe we could talk a little bit more about that in greater detail. So thank you again for allowing me to be here this morning.
So this concludes our event. Thank you for joining us and staying a few minutes late. Please make sure to take your copy of the 2020 Advocacy Update for great articles submitted by today's speakers, ads from our sponsors, and updates from City Hall. Thank you.